Hare Krishna everyone, welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before we do today's verse, that is from Canto 11, Chapter 9, chapter entitled Detachment from All That is Material, let's do a simple Mangala Charana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Narayanam Namaskrityam Narum Chaim Narotamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamudirait. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the only means of conquest, let us offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, onto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nasta Presha Vadareshu Nityam Bhagavatase Vaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavadina Istigehi. By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service to the lotus feet of pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely vanquished, and loving devotional service onto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised by transcendental songs and choice poetry, is established in one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnana Jnana Shalakaya Chaksuramritanyana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master illuminated my heart with the torch of transcendental knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishwamdaya Krishna Parasthai Bhutale Srimite Japataka Swami Iti Namni Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Vidayani Gora Kajadamdaya Nirgram Tani. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today again we are doing Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 11 Chapter 9, chapter entitled Detachment from All That is Material. So this chapter is a continuation of the conversation between the Avadut Bramanah and Maharaj Yadu. Okay, this is a conversation that was told by Lord Sri Krishna to Uddhava. Lord Krishna was telling Uddhava that simply by observing the world around you, the nature around you, and one's own self, you can learn the principles that will give you liberation and freedom from this material world. So to elaborate this point, Lord Krishna began to tell a conversation between an Avadut Bramanah and between Avadut Bramanah and this Maharaj Yadu. Okay, this Maharaj Yadu is the descendant of Krishna himself. In fact, Krishna's another name is Yadavaya. Yadavaya means the one who appeared in the family of Maharaj Yadu. So this Avadut Bramanah, he began to explain to Maharaj Yadu that this Avadut Bramanah, he learnt the principle of liberation from 24 gurus. 24 gurus. So he began to explain that he learnt lessons from earth, he learnt lessons from mountains and trees, from wind, from sky, from water, from fire, from moon, from sun, and from pigeons. And last week we discussed how he learned lessons from python, from ocean, from moth, from bees, from elephants, from honey thief, from deer, from fish, and from a prostitute by the name of Pingala. So today's chapter is the concluding chapter on the conversation between this Avadut Bramanah and Maharaj Yadu, where he will explain the lessons that he learned from one Kurara bird. Kurara bird is like a hawk. Then he learned lessons from a lazy child. He learned lessons from a young girl. He learned lessons from an arrow maker. He learned lessons from serpent. He learned lessons from a spider. He learned lessons from a wasp. So all of this comes to 24 gurus. But in this chapter, this Avadut Bramanah included one more. That is the 25th one. And the 25th one is his own material body. He began to explain how he learned lessons from his own material body. So let's begin the conversation between this Avadut Bramanah and Maharaj Yadu. So the first explanation he is giving is about this Kurara bird. Okay, so he explains here, the saintly Brahmana said, this is text 1. Everyone considers certain things within the material world to be most dear to him. And because of attachment to such things, one eventually becomes miserable. One who understands this gives up material possessiveness and attachment and thus achieve unlimited happiness. Once a group of large hawks who were unable to find any prey attacked another weaker hawk who was holding some meat. At that time, being in danger of his life, the weaker hawk gave up his meat and experienced actual happiness. So this is the lesson of detachment. Detachment from material possessions. So this hawk, he learned that by giving up what he thought in his mind was a very prized possession, that is, for him it was food, it was meat. Okay, but when he gave it up out of being in a situation of danger, inexplicably he experienced happiness. And this is actually true from my own personal experience also. I've seen people who have lots and lots of wealth, lots of money, but unfortunately they don't seem to realize that they are living a very miserable life, very miserable life, just because they have lots of possession and lots of money. This has a lot to do with their karma, and also the fact that the moment you have a little bit more than someone else, you immediately will be envied by others. So that envy actually will cause others to do unspeakable crime onto you, unspeakable violence. And most people who have money, who have wealth, they live in this fear of being attacked by the very people that they trust. So simply because of having a little bit of money, they live in fear. So that is a horrible experience. So this Avadut Bramanah is explaining here that once you are detached from such so-called wealth, so-called material possessions, immediately you feel one kind of a peace, the kind of peace that you can never get from any other source. Only in this peaceful state can you feel happiness, can you experience real happiness. This happiness is everlasting. This is the happiness of the soul being satisfied. So this is the lesson learned from the Kurara bird. It's a large hawk. Okay, let's continue on. This is text number 3. This is a lesson learned from a lazy child. In family life, the parents are always in anxiety about their homes, children, and reputation. But I have nothing to do with these things. I do not worry at all about my family, and I do not care about honor and dishonor. I enjoy only the life of the soul, and I find love on spiritual platform. Thus I wander the earth like a child. In this world, two types of people are free from all anxieties and merged in great happiness. One who is retarded or childish fool, and one who has approached the Supreme Lord, who is beyond the three modes of material nature. So this is the lesson learned from a lazy child. So the reason why he uses the term lazy child is because when the child is foolish, usually parents will not bother the child with so many demands. Today we see parents, they live their secret life that they wish they had through their children, and like that the children suffer unimaginably. So this is how some parents, they abuse their children actually, because the parents desire to be, let's say for instance, the father and mother, they had great ambitions to be very powerful and very famous. So sometimes they torture their children so much, they train them so much into becoming something that the child is not interested to become. And I've seen this many times. And the opposite end of this also is I have seen parents who spoil their children. They spoil their children because these parents, they are not mature in themselves. So what they end up doing is they start to pamper their children too much until the children become spoiled brats. So these parents, they claim that, oh, because I love my children, therefore I want to give my children all those things that I never got to enjoy. So these parents, they don't realize this is actually committing a violence upon a child. Can you imagine? You commit violence upon a child. I can say this with confidence because eventually all these children who are pampered by their parents, they grow up to become very, very angry and very disturbed. So that is the cause of being too much pampered. These children, they become a burden to their own father and mother when they grow up. And also they become a burden to society. So, when I see this and the parents still insist, no, I did this because I love my children. It makes no sense whatsoever. So in Vedic culture, the children from the very beginning of life, they are put to work. They are put to work according to their nature. In Vedic culture, they've got a very wonderful system whereby the moment the child is born, an astrological chart is made of the child. The purpose behind the astrological chart is not to see if the child will become a rich man or rich person, when is the kalyana, when is the marriage. No, that astrological chart is not for that purpose actually. The main purpose for the astrological chart when the child is born is to find out this child's tendency is what. This child is tendency more like a Brahmana, more like a Kshatriya, more like a Vaishya or a Sudra. So according to this astrological chart, the child's education begins. The child is educated according to his nature, what he is naturally interested in. The child is not sent to school to learn useless things like, what they call history and geography. All this you can learn when you grow up. You can learn, now we have, this powerful tool called the internet. Anything you want to know, you can go and look it up yourself. You don't need to go to school and learn all these kind of useless subject matters. So children from the very beginning of life, they are taught the most important knowledge of all. The knowledge that Prahlad Maharaj recommends to every living human being on earth today. That is to learn the lessons from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the basis of your success in life. So, this lesson of this lazy child is that when the child is engaged in activities that is beneficial for him, that gives him benefit that is eternal in nature, not temporary. All our modern education is concerned only with a temporary benefit. But what about the need of the soul? The soul doesn't care for all these temporary benefits. The soul is only interested in reconnecting back to his original constitutional position, being the eternal servant of Krishna. So that information is so important. So Prahlad Maharaj recommends that everyone should not bother the child with useless information, but should engage them in performing loving devotional service. And in today's day, in today's environment, modern day environment, we live in cities, we live in flats, parents are working, children are sent, they spend more time with the the babysitter and kindergarten teacher. The best way to educate children in this day and age of Kali Yuga is simply to become an example for the child. The parents must be an example for the children to see how to make your life successful. Every spare moment, if the parents spend in worshipping the Supreme Lord by serving the deities in your home, reading Bhagavatam, discussing about topics from Srimad Bhagavatam, the child will gain this permanent benefit. When they are children, they might not be interested, but I guarantee you when they grow up, when they become adults themselves, when they become interested in, getting married and all that, they will think back, hey, what did mother and father do? Huh? Oh, they did this, they did worship, they set up an altar in the house, they read Bhagavatam, they learned from it. All the lessons that I've learned, I learned from this scripture. I want to give the same benefit to my wife or my husband or my children. So this is how one makes progress in life. So let's move on. The next one is a lesson learned from a young girl. Okay, this is a bit long, but please bear with me. Once a marriageable young girl was alone in a house because of her parents and relatives had gone that day to another place. At that time, a few men arrived at home, specifically desiring to marry her. She received them with all hospitality. The girl went to a private place and began to make preparation so that the unexpected male guest could eat. As she was beating the rice, the conch shell bracelet on her arm were colliding and making a loud noise. The young girl feared that the man would consider her family to be poor because their daughter was busy engaged in menial task of husking rice. Being very intelligent, the shy girl broke the shell bracelet from her arm, leaving just two on each wrist. Thereafter, as the young girl continued to husk the rice, the two bracelets on each wrist continued to collide and make noise. Therefore, she took one bracelet off each arm, and with only one left on each wrist, there was no more noise. O subduer of enemies, I travel throughout the surface of the earth learning constantly about the nature of this world, and thus I personally witnessed the lesson of the young girl. When many people live together in one place, there will be undoubtedly quarreling. And even if only two people live together, there will be frivolous conversation and disagreement. Therefore, to avoid conflict, one should live alone, as we learn from the example of the bracelet of the young girl. Having perfected the yoga sitting posture and conquered the breathing process, one should make the mind steady by detachment and a regulated practice of yoga. Thus, one should carefully fix the mind on a single goal of yoga practice. The mind can be controlled when it is fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Having achieved a stable situation, the mind becomes free from polluted desires to execute material activities. Thus, as the mode of goodness increases in strength, one can completely give up the mode of passion and ignorance, and gradually one transcends even the material modes of goodness. When the mind is freed from the fuel of mode of nature, the fire of material existence is extinguished. Then one achieves the transcendental platform of direct relationship with the object of his meditation, the Supreme Lord. So this is the lesson learned from this young girl. So this young girl, this story actually is bringing us to the point of understanding of the value of being alone. So a little bit of explanation here. Most people are confused. They are confused between being alone and being lonely. Okay, they are not the same thing. Most people understand that being alone and being lonely is the same thing. Actually, it's like night and day. They are the opposite. Okay, being lonely is actually a condition in a mode of ignorance. When somebody feels that in his heart he is lonely, he's depressed, or the person is lonely, actually that is a sign the person is in a mode of ignorance. Actually, no one is alone at any time. If you understand Vedic scripture properly, there is never a time when one is alone. Why can I say that? How can I say that? The answer is very simple. Our Vedic culture, we know that within our hearts, Paramatma is with us at all moments, at all times. Lifetime after lifetime, birth after birth, we change bodies, innumerable times. Paramatma is constantly with the Jiva Atma, the spirit soul. No matter how many bodies that spirit soul takes, Paramatma is always there. He's always witnessing. He's always waiting. He's always listening. Always ready to serve that living entity, so that eventually that living entity would one day turn to Paramatma and surrender onto his lotus feet and render loving service onto the Supreme Lord. You see, so that is the reality. But when somebody says they are lonely, I'm very alone, I feel depressed, I'm alone, actually what it is actually that person is captured by that person's senses and the mind. The mind is tricking them, making them sad and depressed, so that they will act in a desperate way to fulfill the desires of the senses. That is the problem of being in a mode of ignorance. Okay, that is loneliness. But what about being alone? Being alone is actually very, very desirable. All great sages, all great saintly personalities, they desire within their heart to be alone. If you read the Puranas, there are innumerable stories of great personalities, kings, rishis, sages. They all, their whole life, they'll be performing their duties as brahmanas, as kshatriyas, as vaishyas, as sudras. But in their heart, they're just waiting, when can I get to this retirement age? Why? Because at retirement age, I can leave and I can go to the forest and I can be alone to meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So being alone is something very, very sought after. Very, very sought after. Because only when you're alone can you meditate upon the Supreme Lord. Okay? Can you can develop the principle of vairagya. Vairagya means a detachment. You see, as you become older and older, you realize that within your heart, what you hanker for when you are young, when you become older, they become meaningless. They become meaningless. So that is actually the detachment there. But these sages who aspire to be alone, they want to quickly detach from everything that is temporary and everything that is material, that is of no value, useless. So they become detached. So with regards to being detached, there's a very nice verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 45. Krishna says there, Traigunya Visaya Veda Nistraigunya Bhavarjuna. Krishna tells Arjuna, my dear Arjuna, the Vedas, they mainly deal with a lot of rituals with regards to these three modes of material nature. Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Now those who are very desirable, desiring a lot of material gain in the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance, they will be very much attracted to all these rituals in these Vedic scriptures. You know, there are all kinds of rituals. There is one ritual where you can get nice husband. There's another ritual where you can get nice wife. There's another ritual you can get wonderful children. There's another ritual where you can become, you can have a nice house, house home. You can another ritual that you can get this, you can get that. Like this, it just goes on and on and on and on and on. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, these Vedas, they mainly deal with all these rituals for obtaining all kinds of material things. But after achieving all these material things, after fulfilling all your desires, unfortunately, you in your heart, you will still be dissatisfied. Why? Because you have not addressed the real you. The real you is not your material body. The real you is not your material desires. The real you is the eternal spirit soul. What have you done for the spirit soul? For the body, we do all kinds of things. We bathe, we eat, we take care, we groom ourselves, we exercise, we fill our minds with all kinds of nonsense, so that when we go and meet people, we can talk even more nonsense. This is all to do with the temporary material body. But what have you done for the eternal spirit soul? The real you. So if you never address this real you, the real soul, you will always be dissatisfied, no matter how much you work, how much you accumulate. So that has got to be kept in mind. So being alone helps you to come to this point of knowing yourself, not simply going through life fulfilling other people's wishes, fulfilling your parents' wishes, fulfilling your boss' wishes, fulfilling your spouse wishes, fulfilling your children's wishes. But in all of this, you don't even know who you are. So the only process by which you can know who you are is by finding time to be alone. In this day and age, they call it meditation. But meditation, the way it is being promoted through society, doing Ashtanga yoga, that is actually not recommended. Very few people can actually gain something from doing this kind of meditation, doing Ashtanga yoga and all that. Very few. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can do it if you want to, but the purpose behind this kind of yoga is to know yourself and know who the Supreme Lord is and reconnect with Him. That is real yoga. Not simply putting your leg behind your head, your hand underneath your leg and all that. No. That is not yoga for this day and age. Why? Because not everybody can do it. Not everybody can, do gymnastics. Okay. So the purpose behind being alone is to meditate upon the lessons taught by all the great sages, especially the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So that is the real value of being alone. So being alone is very, very precious. So we should all aspire for this. Okay, let's move on. Let's look at what the Avadut Bramanah learned from the arrow maker. Okay. Thus, when one's consciousness is completely fixed on the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, no one can longer see dualities or internal or external reality. The example is given of an arrow maker who was so absorbed in making a straight arrow that he did not even see or notice the king himself who was passing right next to him. So this is the lesson learned from the arrow maker. Strictly control the mind, concentrate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the lesson of being disciplined, determined and disciplined to follow in the footsteps of great personalities, great souls who are great devotees of the Supreme Lord, who give instruction how one can progress in spiritual life very, very quickly. So the reason why this lesson is very important is because most people don't know this, but devotional service is simply blissful. Devotional service is one art that when practiced, it is simply increasing in bliss and happiness. Spiritual life for the common man on the road means a life of peace, prosperity and happiness. Okay, that is the beginning stage. But as you practice devotional service here means is to perform activities that are pleasing to Krishna and his pure devotees. That's all. Performing it without any expectation of any reward or any return or any acknowledgement. That is devotional service. It must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. Then it can fully satisfy the self, can fully satisfy you. So that is devotional service. So the one very, very important principle in practicing this devotional service is that it must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. So this unmotivated and uninterrupted means here that one must take it very, very seriously. One must perform its rules and regulation very strictly. Only then you will gain the full benefit in the shortest possible time. Okay, let's move on. Let's see what the Avadut Bramanah learned from the serpent. A saintly person should remain alone and constantly travel without any fixed residence. Being alert, he should remain secluded and should act in such a way that he is not recognized or noticed by others. Moving without companion, he should not speak more than required. When a person living in a temporary material body tries to construct a happy home, the result is fruitless and miserable. The snake, however, enters a home that has been built by others and prosper happily. So this is the lesson learned from a snake. Snake. I was about to say python, but there was another lesson where he learned from a python. So this is a lesson learned from a snake, from a serpent. So the serpent by nature, they don't have any possessions. They just take care of themselves like most animals do. Alright. So this verse here is specifically referring to those who want to set up very comfortable living conditions. Alright. So this lesson here also reminds me of one principle in Krishna consciousness, which is simple living, high thinking. Simple living, high thinking. Simple living here means that one only concerns themselves with the material world when it comes to having enough food to eat, having enough clothes so that they are protected from the weather, and having a roof over their head so that when they want to take a rest, want to take sleep, they can have a good rest. That's about it. That's all actually there is required for this material body. Beyond that is all very unnecessary. Even if you don't have anything beyond these three things, that means food, clothes and shelter, you are still okay. You are still doing fine. You can still survive. You can still be happy. You can still be satisfied. It's not necessary that we need more and more things in our life. And today's trend is the young people especially, they begin to realize that having material possession is a miserable condition. So therefore there is a movement called minimalists. Minimalists is those who try to live their life as minimal as possible, having minimal things, keeping their lives as simple as possible, clutter free, not too much of anything, just being very satisfied with themselves and having enough to do what they have to do. That's it. Okay, so this is the lesson learned from the serpent. Let's look at what the Avadut Bramanah learned from a spider's web. This is text 16. The Lord of the universe, Narayana, is the worshipable God of all living entities. Without extraneous assistance, the Lord creates this universe by His own potency, and at the time of annihilation, the Lord destroys the universe through His personal expansion of time and withdraws all the cosmos, including all the conditioned living entities, within Himself. Thus, His unlimited self is the shelter and reservoir of all potencies. The subtle pradhana, the basis of all cosmic manifestation, is conserved within the Lord, and in this way, no different from Him. And in the aftermath of annihilation, the Lord stands alone. So this is a description of Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu is the personality who sleeps on a causal ocean, and from his breathing, when he exhales, universes are created. Innumerable universes are created. From his sweating, the innumerable universes are created. So when he inhales, all these universes that exist for a certain length of time, they all enter into him again and they become one with him. That is called pradhana. Pradhana is the unmanifested raw material that make up our universe. Unmanifested raw materials. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego. These are the 8 gross elements. So the following verse is actually a little bit more of description of the glory of Mahavishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So please listen carefully. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead displays His own potencies in the form of time and guides His material potencies, such as the mode of goodness, into a neutral condition of equilibrium, He remains as the supreme controller of that natural state, called pradhana, as well as the living entity. He is also the supreme worshipable object for all beings, including liberated souls, demigods, and ordinary conditioned souls. The Lord is eternally free from any material designation, and He constitutes the totality of spiritual bliss, which one experiences by seeing the Lord's spiritual form. The Lord thus exhibits the fullest meaning of the word liberation. So here, very interesting, is explaining here that Mahavishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Narayana, He, despite all that He do, despite everything that emanates from His body, He remains always in balance, always the same. It is not like 2 minus 1 equals 1. No. It's not like Mahavishnu, He is 2. When He creates a universe, minus 1. So He becomes smaller, He becomes 1. No. Mahavishnu is 10 minus 1 equals 10. 100 minus 1 equals 100. That is Mahavishnu. That is what it means here. He is not affected. Even though so many universes are created from Him and so many are annihilated, the Lord Mahavishnu, He remains constantly in balance. He is not affected. Okay, that is the first point. And then the second point is that this Mahavishnu is the worshipable personality for all living entities, simply because we are all His part and parcel. We are all part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Narayana. This material world is part of Him, and the main part that is His active ingredient is us, living entities, Jiva Atmas. So therefore, because we are part and parcel of Him, to worship Him is to reconnect with Him. When we reconnect with Mahavishnu, it is like a child reconnecting with the parents. As so long as the child is with the parents, the child's needs are fully supplied by the parents. Whatever the child needs, the parents will take care. The parents will worry for the child. The parents will have sleepless nights. They will think, I say, what shall we do for the benefit of our child? So this is the job of a parent. So Mahavishnu, he said in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he says, Aham bija pratapita. I am the seed-giving fathers of all living entities. So he's admitting, I am the father. So when we reconnect, when we worship the Supreme Lord, what happens is we are reconnecting with our well-wisher. So when we are with our well-wisher, we are automatically happy. The Lord is eternally free from all material designation and constitutes the total of spiritual bliss. So in this material world, we all under the spell of Maya or illusion. We think I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm Indian, I'm Malay, I'm Chinese, I'm a white man, I'm African, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that. So because of this designation, we all try to see ourselves as different from everyone else. And when we see us as different as from everyone else, what we try to do is we try to elevate our false ego. Oh, I'm better than him. Why? Because, I got more money. I wear nicer clothes. I live in a nice place. I have a nice watch. I've got education. I'm more intelligent than him. Like this, like that. But the fact of the matter is that you are not this body. This is all to do with the temporary material body. This has got nothing to do with you. All it takes is one accident to make you lose everything. And this accident also is not something that you can control. It's your karma. So this is a false designation. So he says here that the Supreme Lord Mahavishnu, he is free from all such designations, false designations. Alright? So because he is free from all designation, he presents himself as he is. And our best self-interest is also to reconnect with that personality from which we can know who we really are also. Our eternal identity, not our temporary identity. Like for instance, right now, I'm a North Indian male. I'm 51 years old. I can tell you for certain that how I perceive myself and how I'm treated by others now is totally different from how I was treated when I was 20 years old. Within my lifetime, my identity has changed. How I feel about myself has changed. Can you imagine what will happen when I reach 70 years old? When I become, rusty and cannot move, cannot do this, cannot do that. I'm an old man. I have to depend on others. How will people perceive me? How will I feel about myself? Can't be good. Cannot be good. Old age and sickness is never good. And of course, when you're approaching death, it's never good. But if you don't identify yourself with this temporary material body, but see yourself as an eternal servant of Krishna, no matter what happens to you with regards to your temporary material body, you remain always happy. Why? Because this is not me. My real identity is that I'm an eternal spirit soul. I'm an eternal servant of Lord Narayana. What is there to be said of that? Lord Narayana is always happy, so therefore I am also happy. So let me continue. This is text 19. O subdue of enemy, at the time of creation, the personality of Godhead expends his own transcendental potency in the form of time. And agitating his material energy, Maya, composed of three modes of material nature, he creates the Mahatattva. A little bit about creation. This is text 20. According to great sages, that which is the basis of the three modes of material nature and which manifests the variegated universes is called a Sutra or Mahatattva. Indeed, this universe is resting within the Mahatattva, and due to its potency, the living entity undergoes material existence. Text 21. Just as from within himself the spider expends thread through his mouth, playing with it for some time and eventually swallowing it. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expends his personal potency from within himself. Thus the Lord displays the network of cosmic manifestation, utilizing it according to his purpose and eventually withdrawing it completely within himself. So this example of the spider is actually reminding this Avadut Bramanah that this spider is reminding him of Mahavishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because this spider, from his mouth, he creates his web. And when he wants, he can also swallow up this web. Just like Mahavishnu, when he wants to create, he just creates from his thinking only. He just has to think only, and universes are created from his breathing, from his sweat. And when he likes, he can absorb them all back into his own body, the Mahatattva. All of these universes are actually within him. Okay? So this is text 22. If out of love, hate or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon the particular bodily form, he will certainly attain that form that he is meditating upon. Oh, this is the lesson from the wasp. Okay. O king, once a wasp forced a weaker insect to enter his hive and keep him trapped there. In great fear, the weak insect constantly meditated upon his captor, and without giving up his body, he gradually achieved the same state of existence as the wasp. Thus, one achieves a state of existence according to one's constant concentration. So this is the lesson learned from the wasp. So this lesson learned from the wasp is actually a very, very great secret. This secret is found in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text number 5 and 6. Please go and read this. The text number 6, chapter 8, text 6, Krishna says, Yam yam vapi smaram bhavat, tyajit ante kalevaram, tam tam eviti kaunteya, sadutat bhava bhavita. Whatever one thinks of at the time of death, that he will achieve without fail. So this lesson here is very, very important. The lesson here is that whatever you think of at the time of death is the culmination of all your thoughts throughout your whole life. What have you been obsessing of throughout your whole life? That you will think at the moment of death. And that thought will become the seed of your next body in your next life. For instance, this example given here is about this wasp. Out of love, hate or fear, an embodied soul fixes his mind with intelligence and complete concentration upon a particular bodily form. He will certainly attain the form that he is meditating upon. So that you know what that means or not? That means that if you want liberation in your next life, you should think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at every moment from now. Not when death comes, not when old age comes, not when you become sick. No, you should practice it now. Why? Because when you become sick and when you become old and when you are at the door of death, what you will think will depend on the habits that you have accumulated throughout your whole life, your thinking habits. What do you meditate upon? So at the moment of death, you'll be in tremendous fear, you'll be tremendous anxiety, tremendous pain. And that moment of time, you have no control over the faculty of your intelligence. Only by habit only, you only think according to your habit. So that's why this verse, text 8, chapter 8, text 5 and 6, they are so important. Because it gives everyone who reads this verse and understands it, a way out of this material world. If you don't escape from repeated birth and death in this material world, guess what? You'll get a suitable body and you'll go through the same shit you're going through now in your life. And you'll keep going through it until you learn the lesson. Then you will learn and you ask the right questions. When you ask the right questions like, why am I suffering? I don't want to suffer, but suffering come to me. I have come from somewhere. I was born at one time. Where am I going after death? So this kind of questions, if you ask these kind of intelligent questions like, what is the absolute truth? What is it that is making me do like this? Having these experiences. So if you ask such intelligent questions, Paramatma from within your heart will definitely answer you. He will answer you by sending his pure devotee. Usually he'll come as a Hare Krishna book distributor. Hare Krishna, please buy this book. This book is very wonderful. He'll answer all your questions. Usually it happens like that. It happened for me like that. It happened for a lot of my God brothers also like that. Usually a book by Srila Prabhupada will do the job. You see. So this actually covers 24 gurus. But Avadut Bramanah, he didn't stop here. He gave one more extra, the 25th guru, which is his own body. So let's find out what is his lesson that he learned from his own body. This is text number 24. Text 29 is a jewel verse. Please listen carefully. O King, from all the spiritual masters I have acquired great wisdom. Now please listen as I explain what I learned from my own body. The material body is also my spiritual master, because it teaches me detachment. Being subject to creation and destruction, it always comes to a painful end. Thus, although using my body to acquire knowledge, I always remember that it will ultimately be consumed by others, and remaining detached, I move about this world. A man attached to the body accumulates money with great struggle to expand and protect the position of his wife, children, property, domestic animals, servant, home, relatives, friends, and so on. He does all this for the gratification of his own body. As a tree, before dying, produces the seed of a future tree, the dying body manifests the seeds of one next material body in the form of one's accumulated karma. Thus assuring the continuation of material existence, the material body sinks down and dies. A man who has many wives is constantly harassed by them. He is responsible for their maintenance, and thus all the ladies constantly pull him in different directions, each struggling for her self-interest. Similarly, the material senses harass the conditioned soul, pulling him in many different directions at once. On one side, the tongue is pulling him to arrange tasty food. Then thirst drags him to get a suitable drink. Simultaneously, the sex organs clamor for satisfaction, and the sense of touch demands soft, sensuous objects. The belly harasses him until it is filled. The ears demand to hear pleasing sound. The sense of smell hanker for pleasant aromas, and the fickle eye clamor for pleasing sight. Thus the senses, organs and limbs, all desiring satisfaction, pull the living entity in many directions. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expands his own potency, Maya Sakti, created innumerable species of life to house the conditioned soul. Yet by creating the form of tree, reptiles, animals, birds, snakes, and so on, the Lord has not satisfied within his heart. When he created human life, which offers the conditioned soul sufficient intelligence to perceive the absolute truth and become pleased. So the Supreme Lord was not satisfied by creating all these animals, beasts, birds, snakes, and so on. So he created the human life. Why? Because only through human form of life can we acquire intelligence to perceive the absolute truth, the truth. Param Satyam. We must ask for the absolute truth. What is the absolute truth? Why am I coming again and again experiencing, suffering, repeated birth and death in this material world? So that can only be practiced in this human form of life. So this is the jewel verse, text 29. Please listen carefully. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. Thus, a sober human being should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. So this is a very, very important lesson to know. Having learned from my spiritual masters, I remain situated in realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and fully renounced and enlightened by a realized spiritual knowledge, wandering the earth without attachment and false ego. Although the absolute truth is one without a second, the sages have described him in many different ways. Therefore, one may not be able to acquire very firm and complete knowledge from one spiritual master. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, having thus spoken to King Yadu, the wise Brahmana accepted obeisances and worship from the king and felt pleased within himself. Thus bidding him farewell, he left exactly as he has come. O Uddhava, hearing the words of the Avadut, the saintly King Yadu, who is the forefather of our own ancestors, becomes free from all material attachment, and thus his mind was evenly fixed on the spiritual platform. So this is the last verse from the chapter on detachment from all that is material, from chapter 9. So this is the lesson learned from the Avadut Bramanah. Okay, a quick recap as to the lessons he learned. Okay, first we learned from earth how to become sober. He learned from the mountain and the trees how to serve others, dedicated to the benefit of others. He learned from the wind how to be satisfied by keeping oneself alive, by keeping a simple life and remaining uncontaminated by bodily senses, not being attached to anything. Then he learned the lesson from the sky, how the soul is indivisible and imperceptible, how the soul is actually not affected by anything material. He learned from water how to be naturally clear and purifying. From water he learned how to be transparent, not to be duplicitous, not to be greedy, not to be envious, to be pure at all times. He learned from fire how to devour all things without becoming dirty, becoming contaminated. From fire he learns how to destroy inauspicious desires. He learned that the material body only gets consciousness from the soul. The soul is like fire. From fire he learned that the soul is not affected by birth and death. Okay, from the moon he learns that this material world is constantly changing. The change manifests in the form of appearance and disappearance, birth and death. So it makes no sense to become too much attached or too much affected by that which is material and which is temporary. So that is the lesson learned from the moon. Then the lesson learned from the sun, how to avoid being entangled with sense object, the real form of the soul and the false designation of material body. From the sun he realizes that the soul actually got nothing to do with this material world. The soul is so much more greater. When you believe you are the material body, you are actually bringing down your status. When you believe you are the body, whatever happens to the body, you believe that is you. So when the body falls sick, oh, I am sick. Actually, you are not sick. You are the spirit soul. The soul got nothing to do with this material body. From the pigeon, he learns that too much affection and excessive attachment makes one suffer unnecessarily. One should have, some connection in this material world, so only to the extent that it helps you to perform your duty. That's all. No point getting too much attached to family members and so on and so forth. Okay, and then the last week we did the chapter. He learned the lesson from the python. Python is always peaceful and patient. Cultivate the mentality of detachment. Accepts only things that come easily and it comes by naturally. That is not to over endeavor for material material possessions. From the ocean, the Avadut Brahmana learns that the mind of the sage is very clear and grave, always steady in happiness and distress. Whether there is a typhoon or whether there's a drought, you always if you look at the sea, you look at the ocean, it's always the same. It doesn't go up, go down, it's just always very steady. So the sage is also like that. We should acquire such qualities. From the moth, who cannot control his senses falls into hellish life. The moth, being very attracted by flames and light, he cannot control his senses, therefore he enters into the flame and he burns himself. From the bees, Madhukari, from the bees, and who collect honey unnecessarily. They work very, very hard to collect unnecessarily for only materialistic people to enjoy. Thieves will come and steal from you because you have unnecessarily accumulating things that actually you don't need. So don't become like the busy bee, okay? Unnecessarily collecting too much things. From the elephant, he learned how not to be attached to the form of a woman who makes one fall into a material life. From the honey thief, he collects honey only to be stolen by others. From the deer, he learned how not to be attracted to mundane music and song and waste one's life in such frivolous activities. From the fish, he learns how to control his tongue. From all the senses, the tongue is the most ferocious senses. So the ability to control the tongue is very, very helpful in one's spiritual life. So the easiest way one can control the tongue is simply by eating Krishna Prasad. You make the vow to eat only Krishna Prasad. And then of course in last week's class, the last lesson he learned was from the prostitute Pingala. This Pingala, he learned the lesson of hopes of sense gratification is the root of all suffering. And by giving up such hopes of sense gratification, one can meditate upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead and one can attain peace. So in today's lesson, he learned from the Kurara bird. Attachment miseries. Attachment brings miseries. Unattachment, no possession is unlimited happiness. From the lazy child, he learns that being free of anxiety, one can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead very nicely. From the young girl, he learns that remaining alone makes one steady and makes one's mind fixed on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From the arrow maker, he learned the value of strictly controlling the mind and concentrating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From the serpent, he learned that sages should wander alone, not live in pre-arranged places. Be very, very careful with his interaction with those who are materially absorbed. Grave, not revealing his movement, not taking assistance from anyone. And he speaks very little. Speaks very little here means that he doesn't engage himself in speaking material topics. He only speaks about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then from the lesson he learned from the spider is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead creates material world and winds up into himself. So all those who take shelter of the Supreme Lord also will go home back to Godhead. That is the lesson there. And from the wasp, living entities attain in next life what ever fixed intelligence in this life. That is chapter 8.5 and 6 in Bhagavad Gita. And the last lesson he learned actually from his own body, that is the 25th one, is the fragile material body. Not to waste this rare opportunity of this human life to attain the highest perfection, the highest goal. So these lessons all here is very, very powerful for us. So to guide us in our life. So whenever you look at the sky, you will realize, hey, the sky is unattached. Therefore, I am the eternal spirit soul. I also am actually unattached. The sky is in this world, but it's not attached to this material world. So you go through life thinking of these principles, and this principle will save you in one day. So the one last point that is very important here is that this Avadut Bramanah said here that you can learn from all these lessons. This does not mean that we can give up taking a spiritual master. The value of a spiritual master is not only that he will teach you all these principles. The value of the spiritual master is that the spiritual master will teach you how to apply these principles so that at the end of the life you will get liberation as quickly as possible. In this connection, there is one very wonderful story that I heard about one devotee by the name of Chinnaya from South India. Chinnaya is a great devotee of Balaji. So this devotee Chinnaya, he desired that Balaji dance just like Krishna used to dance with the gopis in Rasa Leela in Vrindavan. So this Chinnaya, he will come up in front of Lord Balaji and he will sing very, very nicely and he will invite the Lord to come and dance. And what will happen is Balaji will come down from the altar and he will dance. He will actually dance. So when the pujaris in the temple, they saw this, they said, wow, this Chinnaya is a very great devotee. So the word spread round that this Chinnaya, simply when he sings in front of Lord Balaji, Balaji will come down from the altar and he will dance according to his tune. So one day what happened was, there was a very great devotee by the name of Ramanuja Acharya. He heard about this Chinnaya. He came to this temple and got darshan of this Chinnaya. So while talking to him, this Ramanuja Acharya requested Chinnaya to ask Balaji the next time he sees him, please ask him one question. So what question is that? He says, please ask the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balaji, please ask him, when will I get my liberation? So Chinnaya said, yes sir, I will ask Lord Balaji the next time when you will get your liberation. So the next time when this Chinnaya appeared in front of Balaji, he asked the Lord, when will Ramanuja Acharya get liberation? So Balaji answered, he said, oh, this Ramanuja will get very, very quickly, very immediately he will get liberation. So hearing this answer, Chinnaya became very happy. And Chinnaya asked Balaji another question. He says, my dear Lord, when will I get liberation? Balaji just kept quiet. He didn't say anything. Then Chinnaya asked the same question again. My dear Lord, when will I get liberation? Balaji looked at him and says, there is no chance for you to get liberation. So this one shocked this Chinnaya. He was shocked. I said, what is this, my Lord? I come, every time I sing for you. I want to please you. You dance when I sing to you. So Balaji answered him. He says, my dear Chinnaya, this singing and dancing thing got nothing to do with liberation. That is your desire. It's got nothing to do with me. Then Chinnaya, being very heartbroken, he asked Balaji, my dear Lord, please tell me, how can I get liberation? So Balaji said, you must go to that personality that knows about liberation. He knows about Bhakti Yoga. He knows the art of applying these principles to get liberation. When you surrender to such a personality and learn the lesson of liberation from him, then only then you can get liberation. So this story emphasizes the point that to accept a guru is very, very crucial. One person, one guru, a living guru. You must accept a bona fide spiritual master from the bona fide sampradaya who can teach you the art of practicing Bhakti Yoga. Only then you will get liberation. And you will get liberation only by serving and pleasing such a bona fide spiritual master. So this is the lesson for today. I hope all of you can meditate upon this, and I request everyone, please kindly read Srimad Bhagavatam and please share this class with others. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.